A massive grizzly bear known only to locals as Green Bear because of his moss-covered fur was spotted by hikers near a raging mountain river. What they caught on video, he was dragging something from the current, something struggling, fragile, a baby deer. But what happened next left wildlife experts speechless. This isn't a fairy tale, it's a true encounter in the wild, one that challenges what we think we know about instinct, compassion, and the quiet intelligence of animals. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss a single chapter of this story, because by the end, you may never see bears the same way again. It had rained for 2 days straight in Glacier National Park, the kind of rain that turned every creek into a current and every river into a roar. That morning, 2 hikers, Anna and Daniel, both wildlife photographers, tread along a ridge known for bear sightings. The path was slick, the trees dripping. The only sound louder than their boots in the mud was the distant thunder of the river down below. Then Anna stopped. She squinted across the ravine and raised her camera. "There," she whispered. Down by the riverbank, half camouflaged by wet ferns and moss-covered boulders, stood a grizzly, massive, alone. But something was off. Its fur wasn't just brown, it shimmered green at the shoulders and back, coated in thick strands of forest moss. It blended into the wet underbrush like living camouflage. Locals had nicknamed him Green Bear years ago, but no one had seen him up close in months. He was moving with purpose now, slowly pacing along the edge of the torrent. Then came the sound, a high, panicked bleat. Anna gasped. "Something's in the water." The 2 crouched by a log and zoomed in with their lenses. In the current, flailing, swept sideways, was a tiny white-tailed fawn, no older than a week. Its legs thrashed helplessly. It had likely been caught upstream, separated from its mother. The river was too fast, too cold. It wasn't going to make it. But Green Bear was already moving. He didn't charge. He didn't roar. He stepped deliberately into the edge of the current, anchoring his massive paws between river rocks. Then he leaned forward, shoulders braced, fur soaked instantly by the freezing flow. Anna held her breath. The bear extended one massive paw. He caught the fawn's flank on the first try. With a firm but delicate motion, he dragged it toward him, not with claws, but as if pulling a cub. The fawn struggled, kicking once, but the bear held it steady, positioning it against a patch of gravel just above water. And then he stepped back. Not a bite. Not a strike. Just silence. The fawn lay trembling, too shocked to run. Green Bear stared at it, his dark eyes unreadable. Then slowly, he turned and walked several feet away, back to the mossy slope. He sat and watched. Anna's hands were shaking. "He's guarding it," Daniel was filming now, barely whispering. "He didn't kill it. He helped it." For the next 20 minutes, they stayed silent, capturing every second. The fawn eventually rose. It stumbled, wobbled, took 2 steps, and vanished into the trees. Green Bear never moved. He waited until it was gone. Then slowly, he rose, shook the water from his coat, and disappeared into the fog. That night, the footage went viral. Wildlife forums, news outlets, and biologists debated the behavior. Instinct, said some. Coincidence, said others. But Anna only said one thing: that bear made a choice, and it wasn't the last one he'd make. The morning after the video went viral, Anna's inbox exploded. Journalists, biologists, skeptics, advocates, everyone wanted answers. Was it real? Was it staged? Was Green Bear sick, old, confused, or something else entirely? But Anna didn't care about the theories. She couldn't stop thinking about the moment the bear looked at the fawn, not as prey, but as something he refused to hurt. She and Daniel returned to the site 3 days later. The river had calmed, but the air was still damp with pine and rainfall. They followed the trail back down the ridge, past the slick boulders, and down to the place where they'd seen the bear vanish. They found tracks, deep, deliberate paw prints leading from the riverbank into the thicker woods. Some showed drag marks, not from prey, but from the heavy moss that still clung to his back, dripping and slow to dry. Green Bear was moving with purpose. As they followed the trail deeper, they noticed something odd: no signs of struggle, no broken branches, no claw marks. Just tracks, controlled, intentional. Then, about a mile in, they found something else, a small clearing, slightly depressed in the ground, lined with flattened leaves and fresh claw rakes in the dirt, not from aggression, but from digging. A cache site. He buried food, Daniel said, crouching beside it. That's normal for this time of year. He's preparing. Anna nodded but didn't speak. Her eyes were fixed on something beside the cache, a single, small hoofprint in the mud. It wasn't from a bear. It was from a deer. A fawn. Small, clean, and recent. Daniel followed her gaze and frowned. I think she came back. They marked the site and set up a motion-triggered trail camera before heading back to the park ranger station. Elise, a veteran ranger who had worked in Glacier for nearly 2 decades, met them at the cabin. "You're the ones who filmed the bear?" she asked. Anna nodded. "We came back. We think the fawn returned." Elise studied the footage they brought. Then she asked the question neither of them expected: "Do you want to see where he sleeps?" They followed her deep into a restricted stretch of forest known as Bear Hollow. Rangers had long tracked Green Bear there, but sightings were rare, mostly prints, some scat, occasionally tufts of moss-flecked fur on bark. "He doesn't avoid humans," Elise explained, "but he doesn't seek them either. He's selective. Always has been." When they arrived at a low, moss-covered den dug into a hillside, Anna felt something tighten in her chest. The entrance was partially obscured, but fresh prints showed he'd been there recently. They set up another camera. Elise turned to them before they left. "If he let you see that moment, you were meant to." That night, Anna couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the look in the bear's eyes, not the moment he saved the fawn, but after. The waiting. The way he sat motionless, like something inside him needed to be sure she was okay. Compassion, awareness, or something deeper. The next morning, the trail camera sent its first alert. One frame, Green Bear, lying in the den mouth, and beside him, barely visible in the shadow, was a small speckled figure, the fawn. 3 days. That's how long the fawn kept returning. Not every hour, not even every day, but enough for the cameras to confirm it wasn't a coincidence. She came alone, her white-spotted coat now muddied with travel, legs still thin and uneven, but more confident each time. She never wandered far from the den, never approached the bear. She simply appeared, fed near him, lay in the moss a few feet away, then disappeared again into the brush. Green Bear didn't move, didn't growl, didn't chase. He would lift his head, track her with those deep amber eyes, and return to stillness, like a sentinel or something softer. By the time the 3rd video clip was logged, word had spread to state wildlife officials. "We should be cautious," one biologist warned. "We can't anthropomorphize. Bears don't befriend deer. This isn't a Disney film." But even scientists couldn't deny what was on the screen. The footage was shared with a handful of behavioral ecologists, people who had studied bears for decades. Most dismissed it. One, however, asked for every frame. Quietly, privately. Her name was Dr. Lena Reyes, and she flew in from Oregon 2 days later. She met Anna and Daniel near the original riverbank and hiked with them to the clearing. She spoke very little. She watched. She listened. And when the trail cam triggered again, another clip, this one at dusk, showed the fawn bedding down just a few body lengths from Green Bear. She said only one thing: behavior this consistent, it's not mistake or memory. It's permission. That night, Elise joined them at the station. Over tea and whispered reflections, they tried to piece together what they were seeing. Maybe the fawn had imprinted on the bear during the rescue. Maybe he tolerated her presence out of learned non-aggression. Or maybe, impossibly, he recognized something of his own past in her struggle. A loss. A fear. A fight to survive the current. Because Green Bear had his own history. Years earlier, a wildfire had swept through the southern range of Glacier. Rangers believed Green Bear had been caught in it, possibly lost a mate or cubs. His appearance changed after that. More solitary. More moss-covered. His range tighter, closer to streams. Never hostile. Never friendly. Just watching. What if he remembers? Anna asked quietly. Elise didn't answer. But no one dismissed the thought. Over the next week, they observed the pattern continue. Mornings, the fawn arrived from the west. She'd graze within a tight radius of Green Bear's den, rest occasionally in the tall grass, then vanish by nightfall. Sometimes Green Bear would stand, just once or twice, and reposition himself to face the direction she came from. Protective? Territorial? Or was he guiding her? The footage began to affect people far beyond the forest. When a short compilation was posted online, no music, no narration, just the raw movement of two unlikely creatures coexisting, it gathered over 5 million views in a week. Comments flooded in: "I've never cried over a bear before. This makes me believe animals feel more than we know. This broke and healed me at the same time." And among the posts, one message stood out, left by someone anonymous: "Maybe we're not supposed to understand it. Maybe we're just meant to witness it." And so they watched. They logged. They waited. Because something was forming in that forest, something no one could label, measure, or own. A bond? Or maybe just a choice, repeated again and again, until it looked like something else entirely. Grace. It was supposed to be another silent morning. The mist curled low through the trees, and the trail cams flickered one by one as the forest came alive with dew and birdsong. Anna and Daniel were already reviewing footage from the night before. The fawn had returned again, nuzzled briefly at the soil where Green Bear had lain, then curled herself beneath a cluster of fern. Routine. Familiar. Until something shattered it. At 6:42 a.m., the main trail cam caught movement. It wasn't the fawn. A pair of boots, heavy, scuffed, unmarked, stepping into frame near the clearing. Then another pair. 2 men. No wildlife tags. No ranger uniforms. They carried rifles. One of them had a GoPro strapped to his shoulder. They moved low, but not carefully. Not like hikers. Poachers. Elise arrived within the hour. One glance at the footage and her jaw tightened. "They're not locals," she said. "But they know what they're doing. And they're after something specific. Green bear. His rescue had made him a quiet celebrity. No collar, no tag, no fence. But viral. And vulnerable. There were people online who didn't see him as a marvel of nature. They saw him as a trophy. They must have tracked the footage, Daniel said bitterly. Found the region. Found the den. Anna's stomach twisted. And the fawn's been coming every day. They acted fast. The ranger team set up motion sensor perimeter alarms. They masked the scent trail with pine oil. They temporarily disabled the trail cameras near the den to prevent infrared giveaways. But they didn't find the men. Not yet. That evening, for the first time in nearly a week, the fawn didn't appear on any of the cameras. Green bear did. Standing at the edge of the clearing, facing the woods. Still. Rigid. Waiting. The team watched him from a hidden distance, hearts caught in throats. Elise whispered into her mic, "He knows something's changed." And he was right. The next day, they found a snare, half-sprung, tucked beside a game trail not 20 yards from the den entrance. Fresh meat. Fresh scent. But untouched. Green bear hadn't taken the bait. Instead, the camera caught him circling the area once, then marking nearby trees aggressively, a behavior he hadn't shown before. He was warning them back. Not just as a bear. As a protector. Anna stayed up that night at the ranger station, watching frame after frame. Around 2:13 a.m., a new motion clip came in. The fawn. She returned. Alone. Skittish, but determined. She stepped carefully into the clearing, ears twitching with every gust of wind. She stood at the den's mouth. And Green Bear stepped out, slow, silent. He didn't approach her. He just stood beside her. And for several minutes, neither moved. Then, as if prompted by something deeper than fear, the fawn turned and slipped back into the woods, quickly, decisively. Green Bear watched her go. And then he, too, vanished. Elise gave the order the next morning. Pull the cameras. Pull the sensors. We don't need anyone else here again. But what if we lose him? Daniel asked. Anna looked at the empty den, the pine-stirred silence, and said, maybe that's the point. They left that forest with everything they'd brought. No tags. No tracking collar. No interference. Because something pure had happened here. And to preserve it, to let it live, they had to let it go. But as they hiked out, Elise paused, crouched, and drew one quick line in the dirt with her glove. She didn't say a word. She just walked on. Winter came fast to the northern ridge. By late November, the trails near Bear Hollow were covered in snow so thick it muted every sound. The cameras were gone. The poachers never returned. And the den, last seen framed by moss and silence, now slept beneath a blanket of frost. Green Bear had vanished. So had Tinoha, the fawn. And with them, the story faded. Anna and Daniel moved on to other projects, photographing migrating elk, tracking lynx through snowdrifts. But every time they passed the old trailhead, Anna found her eyes drifting to the bend in the trees. The place where something impossible had once felt real. Real. Do you think they survived? Daniel asked one night around a fire. She didn't answer for a while. Then, I think they were both meant to. It wasn't until March, nearly 4 months later, that the silence finally broke. Elise, now deep into spring scouting with her ranger team, found something unexpected near a fresh runoff stream, a trail of heavy paw prints in wet earth. Not from a bear just emerging from hibernation. These were recent. Steady. Confident. He wasn't just awake. He was moving. Green Bear. He had returned to his old territory. But he wasn't alone. Half a mile from the stream, tucked into a thick patch of spruce, they found a second set of tracks. Small. Sharp. Cloven. Deer. Fawn-sized. Still light in the step. Still traveling near the bear's path. It couldn't be the same one, they thought. It couldn't. But instinct said otherwise. That evening, Anna and Daniel hiked to the same overlook where it had all begun. The river below was thawing now. Not roaring like that first day, but whispering spring's voice. They watched from a safe distance, hours passing, nothing moving but the wind. Until dusk. A shape stepped from the trees. Green Bear. He looked older now. Heavier through the shoulders. Fur rough from winter. But the moss was still there, still clinging to his back like a signature. He approached the water, stood, waited. Then, from the other side of the clearing, another figure emerged, delicate, slim, the fawn, grown now but unmistakable. Her white spots had faded, but her posture still carried that cautious grace. She didn't hesitate. She crossed to him. And just like before, they didn't touch, they didn't need to. They stood side by side as the sky dimmed, watching the river together. Two survivors. Two stories once tangled by accident, now choosing to meet again. Anna's eyes welled up as she lifted the camera. Her hands shook so much she couldn't press the shutter. Daniel didn't speak, didn't move. He just let the moment be. Because some stories aren't about capturing, they're about remembering. Later that night, as they packed up, Anna whispered something into the wind. He saved her once. Maybe she saved him back. No one could explain why Green Bear had returned to the same stretch of land or why the deer had come too. But the distance between them, that invisible thread, had held. Not out of need, but choice. A choice made twice, once in water, once in snow. And maybe again someday, when no one was watching. The river was higher than usual that spring. Snowmelt from the upper peaks turned the current back into something angry, loud, fast, unrelenting. The same river where it all began now surged with the power to undo everything. Anna and Daniel had returned to Glacier again, unsure of what they might see. But something inside them, a quiet hope or maybe just unfinished awe, brought them back to the same overlook above the bend. They waited 2 days. And on the third, just before dusk, they saw him, Green Bear, lumbering along the water's edge, slow but strong. The familiar moss still clinging to his fur like part of the forest itself. He moved with purpose, ears twitching against the sound of the river. And then the Corsa appeared. No longer a fawn, but still delicate. Still unmistakable. She stood on the opposite bank, frozen. Something was wrong. Anna lifted her binoculars and immediately saw it. A downed tree had shifted into the river, breaking apart the shallow crossing point. Now the only path back required entering the main current, too deep, too fast, too dangerous for her. The deer paced, clearly panicked. She stepped forward once, hooves skimming the mud, then jerked back. She wanted to cross, but she knew she couldn't. Green Bear stood on the other side, watching. Waiting. Then, slowly, he stepped into the water. Not to cross. Not to reach her. But to position himself midstream. With the water crashing against his chest, he planted his paws and stood firm, like a boulder. A break in the current. A shield. Anna's breath caught. The deer hesitated, then stepped in. Every second felt like it would crack the sky open. She entered the river cautiously, legs trembling with each push against the current. The water surged around her chest, lifting her slightly, pulling her sideways. She would be swept, until she wasn't. Until she reached the space just behind the bear. There, in his shadow, the water broke gently. Just enough. She pressed forward. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. He held the river like a wall. And she passed through. Reaching the far bank, the deer stumbled out of the water, soaked and wild-eyed but alive. She turned. Green Bear stepped back from the current and climbed out too, slowly, deliberately. They stood side by side again as the light died in the trees. Anna dropped the camera. She didn't care about the shot anymore. Daniel whispered, he did it again. But it wasn't about rescue this time. Not entirely. This time, it was something deeper. Not instinct. Not memory. Trust. He knew she would try to follow him. And she trusted him to clear the way. That night, Elise reviewed the new footage and shook her head in disbelief. We always think the line between predator and prey is solid, she said softly. But sometimes it's just a shadow. Later, back at their cabin, Anna stared at the empty trail, her voice quiet. It wasn't the river that mattered. It was the choice to cross it together. Summer came soft and early. The river calmed. The moss thickened. The pines leaned just slightly more golden under the July sun. Green Bear hadn't been seen for 3 weeks. The cameras, what few remained at a distance, showed empty paths, trails untouched, silence that pressed like a closed book. The deer too had vanished. Not in fear. Not in flight. Just gone, as if the forest had finally taken them back. Anna and Daniel returned one last time, not for footage, not for fame, but for closure. They hiked quietly through Bear Hollow, where everything had begun. The clearing was overgrown now. The den entrance nearly sealed by thyme and pine needles. The river beyond flowed gentle again, as if nothing had ever raged through it. But they remembered. They reached the overlook at dusk and waited for hours. Nothing moved. Then, just as the sky folded from orange into deep purple, something rustled below. First a figure, low, graceful, stepping into the open with cautious ease, the deer. Her gait was smoother now, her ribs no longer showed. Her movements no longer frantic. She looked around, ears high, eyes wide. And then he followed, from the trees. Green Bear. His fur still bore flecks of green. His steps were slower, but his head was high. And his eyes, even from a distance, burned with the same quiet clarity as before. They stood together in the very spot where it all began. No cameras. No audience. No rescuers. Just the two of them. And the trees. Anna pressed her palm against her chest. They came back, she whispered. Daniel didn't answer. He just smiled, a real one. Quiet. Complete. Neither animal looked up. They didn't need to. Their bond had never been for anyone else to understand. They lingered a few minutes, then turned, side by side, and walked back into the forest. That was the last time they were ever seen. But their story never stopped. In the years that followed, rangers began calling the ridge near the crossing Memory Hollow. A sign was placed quietly near the overlook. Here, once, a bear gave the river back. And something fragile found its way home. No statue. No plaque. No fanfare. Just space for reflection. For awe. For what's possible when instinct is met with grace. If this story moved you, remember this: true strength isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet choice to stand still. To protect. To guide. When no one else expects it. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling us how this story touched you. Share it with someone who still believes in kindness beyond species. Because in a world that often forgets how to listen, sometimes it's the forest that remembers for us.